समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
It should have been the greatest show on earth, and in some ways, the AI summit held in Delhi was a success. You had enthusiastic entrepreneurs, you had tech guys who were excited to be there, you had some world class speakers coming in. So, yes, it wasn't a complete disaster. So, here's my question: why will no one in Delhi remember this summit with any affection at all? Basically, because the human factor. You may want to celebrate artificial intelligence, but when it comes to the government of India, there's a great shortage of natural intelligence. Let's start with what went wrong. I think even the government accepts and the organizers accept that the first day was full of foul ups. There were instances where people were not allowed in, where they were then locked out of the areas that had been allotted to them because they were told there were security concerns or somebody important was coming and they couldn't use their offices. When they went back to the areas allotted to them, some of them found goods had been stolen. So much for security. How are you going to protect VIPs if you have petty thieves roaming the aisles and stealing things from there? There were other screw ups also. I think people complained about how difficult it was to get into the summit, how difficult to get out. Apparently, the nearest metro station was not operational, no buses had been arranged. So, ordinary delegates, and thousands of them, walked for miles to find any kind of transportation. Nobody even considered what they would do. And then, of course, there was the joke factor. This is a summit celebrating India as an information technology superpower. But according to delegates who complained bitterly, if you went to the kiosks to buy things, not only would they not accept UPI, they sent you to another counter and then you had to buy a coupon and then you had to come back with the coupon and buy what you were doing. This could have been India in the 1950s. It shows us ultimately that however much we talk about technology, almost everything that's any good has been done by the private sector. As far as the Babus are concerned, they're still living in the 1950s. Well, that was one set of problems. There was a second set of problems, and which was the nature of the exhibitors. Now, you've probably heard of Galgotias dog by now. Everyone has. But let me give you a bit of the background. Galgotias is an educational institution in UP of no great consequence according to most educationists, but they know how to play the game. They recently hosted the Chief Minister of UP, who said they were a model for all other universities in UP, which makes you wonder about UP. They also got awards from national personalities. They continue to say how much they love this government, how much they love all the important figures in this government, and they use their students quite shamelessly to ingratiate themselves with the government. For instance, whenever, and recently there was an issue, the government was under attack and Galgotias came to their aid. Its students went on a demonstration. I think the issue was something very small, like inheritance tax or something. The issue was enough to get their students, none of whom understood what was going on, marching in protest and supporting the government. Some of these guys were stopped because they were carrying these placards that somebody had written for them by a television channel and asked, what are you protesting against? The guy, who obviously had no clue what these words were, said, against urban Maxwells. I think, we can't be sure, he meant urban Naxals, which is one of those fashionable terms among the right wing. But no, he had no idea. But it works. It's good for Galgotias because they're close to the government, never mind the education they provide. And so they get things. For instance, at this AI summit, they're given a larger area for their displays than, say, the IITs. It was a really impressive area. Unfortunately, Galgotias itself is not very impressive. So during their demonstration, they produced a robot dog, which they said had been developed by the university. And it seemed impressive that this university in Noida could develop these things. Except that you can't get away in this day and age. The government of India may live in the 1950s, but everybody else lives in this century. So what, within an hour, more than an hour, what, an hour and a half maybe, they had tracked down internet people, had tracked down users, and people watching the summit had tracked down the so-called Galgotia dog. It was a robot that you could buy off the shelf. It was made in China. It cost something like 2 lakh. It was so easily available and so well known that you wonder about the stupidity of people who tried to pass it off as their own. But in a way, it's on par with what Galgotias did. In an effort to ingratiate itself with the government, the university produced a paper during COVID saying that the banging of thalis would affect the COVID virus. Seriously, this was a claim by the alleged scientists at this so called university. What made matters worse is when they had been exposed, their faculty were told to go out and lie. They said, oh, we never said development. We just said we developed something. They lied, they lied, they lied. When the lies didn't work, Galgotias then issued a statement saying that the faculty were useless and it was all their fault. So the fat cats who own it and who make crores accepted no responsibility. But chamchagiri can only get you so far. They were thrown out of that hall, told to clear their kiosk, had to leave. They apparently refused. The government, again, this is the 50s all over again, cut their electricity so that they had no choice but to leave. Now, the Galgotia thing became a symbol of the AI summit. It featured in the foreign press everywhere. It made a joke out of India. The Chinese, who've always maintained that we lie about our technological prowess, use this as an example to show that India buys things from us and passes them off as their own. It was, in terms of global PR, a disaster. The summit was actually supposed to achieve the opposite, but hey, what can you do? If you reward your chamchas, you pay the price. Unfortunately for Galgotias, no proper explanations have been forthcoming. It's been attacked, and more dodgy stuff that the university, well, I use the term university loosely, did has now been discovered. As for the government, the position is, listen, we were fooled by these guys. We had no idea. Yeah, sure, what they did was wrong. But why blame the summit? Okay, I mean, of course, you can blame the summit, but I understand what the government is saying. We should not let one lot of fakers distract us from what happened at the summit. But it was too late. By then, this story had reached the whole world. Every technological publication, every mainstream publication, every news agency was running that story. So, day one, you had the screw ups. Day two, you had the lies. But there was another factor which I think is symptomatic of this mentality, which is that the summit was all about VIPs and photo ops. They were really well taken care of. The ordinary citizen was not so lucky. Now, people will tell you it's very difficult to organize summits. Perhaps it is. But the truth is, many cities, many great cities all around the world, invite many world leaders at the same time, organize similar conferences, similar summits. In New York, for instance, where the General Assembly meets every autumn, at least 100 world leaders are in attendance. They get security and it's a nuisance, but they manage not to make it such a nuisance that the citizens wonder if they count for anything. Not in Delhi. In Delhi, there was just so much security that it was as though they didn't think that the ordinary citizen was worth anything. For instance, I'll give you an example. This is the peculiarly Indian thing. When any VIP passes, they stop traffic for 10 minutes. We've got used to it. It's annoying. It's not like England. For instance, in England, I once was stuck at a traffic light and the Queen was in the next car. But we do this and it's our way. And I think all of us get annoyed when we are stopped for 10 minutes because some minister or some visiting foreigner is passing by, but we get over it. But when you keep stopping traffic for many VIPs, there were at least a dozen, for about 40 minutes each time any of them passes, you create chaos. The chaos doesn't just extend to the area around the summit. Because you've blocked so many roads for so long, all of Delhi is affected. There are tailbacks, there's a multiplier effect. Effectively, the city comes to a standstill. Why have they done this? Because the Delhi police don't know any other way to protect VIPs. That's why the citizens of Delhi have no real affection for the summit. They see it as a disruptive influence. They see it as something that caused enormous inconvenience. And while the minister in charge of the summit correctly apologized for the screw-ups of the first day. As far as I know, to date, not one person has apologized to us, the citizens of Delhi, who were treated like dirt and pushed around while these guys did VIP worship. But it's not fair to just look at the summit, which of course had its successes. It's a picture of India as a whole, a snapshot of today's India. It has all those familiar elements. Big talk by the government, not backed up by any organization. Chamchas getting lots and lots of space to show off and embarrassing India. A focus on VIPs, VIP worship, photo ops, concern with PR over substance. That, alas, is what we sometimes get into. And it's a tragedy because we have a first-rate technological community. This government, I think at some level, at least the Prime Minister level, is sincere about encouraging these people. But this is what you end up with. You end up with a summit that is criticized, perhaps unfairly, around the world. And you end up with citizens who hate the idea of the summit. Does that make sense? No. But what makes sense in today's India?